Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of OP Radio. I'm your host, Mac. I'm a content strategist at OP Labs. We've got another great episode lined up for you today. We're going to dig right into Coordinape, a coordination and recognition toolkit, what it is, what it does. Before we do that, though, I'd like to allow our guests today to introduce themselves. Good morning, guys. How you doing? Let's have Zach go first. Zach, you want to say hi to the folks on OP Radio?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in this morning. I'm Zach, one of the co-founders of Coordinape, and stoked to be here.
Thanks for that, Zack and Zemm.
Hey, everybody. I'm also one of the co-founders of Coordinape and also stoked to be here.
Awesome. So, guys, I would love, before we get into Coordinape, I would love to get a little bit more on your background. I always like to get a little bit of the personal histories of the people, what they did before their current projects and how they got involved with crypto.
Sure. I'm happy to go first. So I came pretty late, relatively late to the game, to crypto. Before this, I spent about 10 years. I co-founded a consultancy called Converge, and it was focused on impact networks for social and environmental change. So we would basically go all over the world and bring together multi groups of stakeholders to try and affect things on a systemic level, whether that's redwood preservation or migrant rights across borders, smallholder farmers in Africa. So we'd bring corporate leaders, government leaders, and nonprofit leaders together in these large convenings over time. And then I discovered DAOs, and it really I kind of went in head first because it really seemed like a way to scale the work that we had been doing in Converge, which how I think about it now is really like just creating IRL DAOs. And so I had been steeped in network decision making and governance and all this stuff. And so discovering DAOs in 2001 started contributing a little bit at Yearn and other DAOs, and just really jumped into the space head first.
Interesting. So not all that different from what you're doing now, it sounds like, Zach. I could see the through line there with, coordination with different organizations. You're just doing it on chain now.
Exactly. The way that we paid each other at Converge, so we were all consultants, but there was no salary or payroll. We just, we would invoice a client and then put the money in the middle of the table, and whoever had worked on the project, we'd all have a conversation about how much we think we should get based on our contribution. So that was one of the inspirations for Coordinape, is just, how do we get better, more effective coordination and collaboration?
Interesting. I'm curious how those conversations went. Like, did people generally, was it easy to arrive at consensus about how each individual should be rewarded? Like, was it clear to everybody who created the most impact and thus that they should be rewarded commensurate with that?
Usually it was. Usually in any team there are, there's generally people who step forward more, and there's people who make important contributions, but less for whatever reason. One of the things that we noticed, and the reason that I'm still so excited about Coordinape, is sometimes even though these conversations were hard, they made for a much more effective team, right? Because you have to have real conversations about, who was doing things that were valuable. What are the things that you were doing that maybe you thought were valuable that weren't perceived that way? And it kind of created a really good cycle of like team hygiene, just to talk about these things that are important, and build trust, and learn how to navigate through conflict. And so yeah, we found that they sometimes would be contentious, but pretty rarely. Usually it was actually the opposite. People are so eager to acknowledge and appreciate people for their contributions, that it generally was kind of feel good. Even when they hit bumps, in the end, it's just it makes for a more effective team.
Totally. Yeah. Good to have those regular check-ins with any relationship, working, personal, or otherwise. Thank you for that, Zach. And then Zemm, I'm curious to hear about your background. What were you doing before Coordinape?
Yeah, sure. Well, my background is really as an artist mostly. I worked in physical artworks and had a real concentration in collaborations, especially sort of a serial collaborator. Did a lot of sort of shared projects with other artists. Sort of collaborating on exhibitions and things like that. And in some ways, I think I was also DJing back in 2017, the kind of DJing you could do back then. But in some ways, I think that it's that collaboration focus that brought me in and made me excited about the possibilities of what was happening in DAOs and in the landscape as kind of Web3 emerged from crypto. And yeah, I think that still kind of remains like my main excitement. The idea that in spaces of really radically open collaboration, there's this kind of anti-hierarchical, very fluid kind of power center that can kind of rove around and changes according to need and according to kind of intuition and inspiration. And, I sort of see that still happening and developing in DAOs that I've worked in and also in the way that we're trying to build the Coordinape app and vision, to kind of support that future.
Very cool. Zemm, what was your preferred medium? What do you like to work in as an artist?
I really work in like pen and ink and painting, like pretty traditional mediums. I kind of grew up like doodling and sketchbooks and working like collaboratively on works with other artists in that way. Just sort of a very close, simple art form that's really about like kind of meaning arising from the page. I also do writing, and I was a kind of early NFT creator too, and still do that kind of thing as well.
Awesome. Sounds like you're a real Renaissance man, Zemm.
I don't know about that, but yeah, trying to make something work.
He is.
Okay,
I'll vouch for it. He's a total Renaissance man.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so I would love to just give the folks listening like an overview of what Coordinape is in case they're not familiar with it. We've kind of alluded to it thus far with cooperation, coordination amongst people, but maybe Zach, do you want to give us like the elevator pitch for what Coordinape is and what it does?
Sure thing. So Coordinape is at its heart a tool to appreciate and acknowledge and reward like fellow team members on any decentralized or distributed team. And so the idea is that you can use give, which are sort of like internal poker chips in a circle of your collaborators. You give to other members that you've been collaborating with according to your perception and experience of the value they added to a project over some specified period of time that we call epochs. And so then those give can be used to, for example, distribute tokens or reward people. So, there may be a 10,000 USDC in a circle and people distribute their give. Everyone in the circle has 100 give to distribute to everyone else. And so if I got 10% of the give, I would get 10% of whatever was the budget was for that circle. So in this case, 1,000 USDC. You can also do that for native tokens, anything really. And what we've seen increasingly is teams are also using it not just for distribution of compensation, but really just to really reward and acknowledge contributions and build reputation. So I'm sure we'll get a little bit later into the call about CoSoul, but this is a soulbound token, an NFT that users can mint to take their give on chain. So any circle that you've collaborated in and received give from folks, you can take that and show it on chain, so that really kind of becomes a living CV that isn't just saying I worked on this project, but people can really see what specifically where you worked and that people valued your contribution and acknowledged you for it.
Excellent. Yeah, that was a great overview. So essentially the give is like a representation of a person's contribution in any given organization. And that will then be split up proportionally or rewarded with the asset which you choose. Take USDC, for instance. Guys, I'm curious, like, why not just basically reward someone directly with like that asset, like USDC?
Well, abstracting that away, allows people just to really focus and think about what the contribution is. If we're working together and it may feel like giving you $50 is like somehow too much or not enough, right? But giving you 10 give is like that feels good because it's sort of just a representation. And that money, depending on what token you're distributing, that might be a lot of money or a little money. But we tried to sort of abstract that away and move people's mindset more toward, just really appreciating and acknowledging folks for the work that they've done, and not focus on sort of the ranking and how much was that worth. Trying to sort of get away from the hardcore quantification of dollars and really get into more the gratitude and acknowledgement, which is really what ultimately feeds team performance.
Totally. And I could see how that would really simplify the process. So maybe an example would be helpful. Like, let's say you're part of a DAO and you're the marketing arm of this DAO, and you guys have a budget, right, over a certain span of time, or an epoch. And let's say that budget is like 10,000 USDC. Instead of having to think about, well, how much USDC or dollars does this specific individual or contributor get? You can just say they get this much give, because I think that's how much that they deserve based on their contributions over this time period.
Right. So say you have 10 people in this marketing circle, and some are going to be working really closely together. So they'll probably allocate a lot of give, to each other because they're so in depth aware of what they've been working on. But you're generally aware of other folks too. And the idea is that, you'll get a subjective and imperfect, but a pretty good sense of, who are the star contributors, who are the folks that really went above and beyond. And, for a lot of teams, for example, if you have, a 10,000 USDC budget, it might be that there's a floor payment for everybody. So it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% of compensation coming in this way. It could act more like a bonus pool. But really it's, as much about compensation as it is about team cohesion and sort of inviting people to have, conversations that they need to have about how people are contributing, and really how to reward those folks that are really crushing it, and make them feel, appreciated and valued, and hopefully incentivize others to work in that way too. We might talk more later in the call, but the mindset shift that using Coordinape invites teams into is really a big part of what we're trying to encourage, is, really being accountable to each other and creating a culture of sort of appreciation, acknowledgement, and gratitude, and really cheering on the people that are doing great work, rather than sort of trying to punish the people that aren't.
Absolutely. And Zach, you brought up a point that I want to drill into a little more, which is that these contributors are awarding give to one another, right? It's not like there's one sole entity who's awarding it to members of the circle. They can give it to each other. That's correct, right?
Exactly right. The whole idea is that, this was created for DAOs that don't have a central person deciding who should get what. And so it really is an exercise in collective intelligence. Although we've seen all sorts of teams adopting and adapting it.
So I can really see the benefit to that, because I think the individuals are going to be the closest to the work that they're performing, right? So they're going to have the best sense of who's contributing. And so therefore they'll have a better sense of who should be rewarded and how much.
Exactly right. Really pushing decisions to the edges is like one of the principles that we really think about.
Decentralizing.
So yeah, exactly. And creating space for people to really make their full contribution in a permissionless way, and then get the feedback from their fellow contributors about the value that was created there. over some specific period of time. And because of the way that, a lot of work happens now, people are on different teams. They might be, even in different DAOs. And so your focus and participation is naturally going to sort of rise and fall depending on context and different things. And so it makes sense that when you're showing up and really, putting in a lot of effort, adding a lot of value, you'll get more give. And then, you don't have to feel bad about when it's times like, oh, I'm stepping back, I'm doing other stuff, I'm still contributing, I'm getting recognized for it, but the other folks who are stepping up can also be, rewarded then too. So it's really advantageous for the organization to be always directing resources to where the most value is coming from.
Yeah, just zooming out here, we've really seen like a fundamental shift in the nature of work, or at least in digital work, right? We're all familiar with, remote work is really on the rise, and this is a new thing. It's a little different, and so it doesn't really make sense to approach remote work and distributed work in the same way that you would when you were going into an office every day.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And this is really, and the idea is to help invite people into this different mindset of like, we're not in going to be in pyramid shaped hierarchies anymore. They're going to be still hierarchies, but natural hierarchies, fluid hierarchies, depending, we always like to say the leader is the one who knows what to do next, like really shifting and rewarding those folks who step into leadership and then step back and let others step in. And these sort of fluid swarms, I think, increasingly will be the new shape of work in organizations.
I have a naming suggestion that just occurred to me, Zach. Maybe you should call the leader in circles the alpha, going along with the Coordinape name.
No, maybe we'll put that on the whiteboard and see.
I've been watching some chimpanzee documentaries, in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah, the name is actually a play on like, hey, let's coordinate the apes. Let's evolve beyond this. Our apish tendencies. So hopefully, we're creating a system where many alphas can coexist.
Yeah, and it's just interesting when you not to go too far deep into this rabbit hole, but looking at chimpanzee societies, yes, there is an alpha, but there's also a group of alphas surrounding that alpha, and that alpha needs their help to get anything done.
Yeah, 100%. Kind of like it's the first followers that turn the lone dancing nut into a leader. So yeah, we hopefully envision teams where different people can step up based on their expertise and contributions, and follow along, follow from there.
So this is really interesting. You guys are innovating in this new paradigm for remote work. I'm curious what, if anything, you've seen from tractions from teams like startups using Coordinape. Have they been able to make this sort of mindset shift to a more decentralized, like a flatter hierarchy?
Yeah, I think for a lot of teams that just feels more natural, right? Especially for startup teams where kind of everyone is doing everything. We've certainly seen a lot of interest and traction from teams that are just at the beginning of a journey. And this was something that didn't really occur to us when we were first starting Coordinape. It was primarily we're thinking about it as compensation, but users have really expanded the different use cases. And what we're seeing is like they can just start using Coordinape even with their small team to sort of create a record and kind of a contribution tracker, so that if there ever is equity or tokens distribution that they want to talk about, they sort of have a record of who came in and was actually building and collaborating. So definitely seeing uptick with startup teams. Maybe we'll get into a story a little bit later about actually seeing some large corporations also experimenting, which kind of took us by surprise, but a really exciting story as well. So definitely seeing, outside of the sort of core DAO use case, other folks just seeing the value of appreciating and acknowledging each other, and using that also potentially to direct resources.
Yeah, I'd also add that hybridity has definitely been really exciting to see the different kinds of ways that teams have used Coordinape. And another one that definitely I always think about as one of our kind of success stories is that for some groups, what ends up happening is that rather than seeing success on a small team level, it becomes like a real unlock to like developing the shape of their organization at large. So we've seen several DAOs and digital organizations start using Coordinape and realize that they need a kind of like polyphony of different circles with different meanings to hold all the different endeavors that they want to do. Like a marketing group will pop up, a data analysis group will pop up, and that the kind of sort of fluid hierarchyless shape of a Coordinape circle also seems to extend to the organization level and helps the kind of the shape of the org to develop. So that's been really exciting for me to see that happen a few times, and how it's been a catalyst for organizational growth and wayfinding.
And something else I wanted to touch on, I just want to underline the fact of how impactful praise is in an organization. Just speaking from firsthand experience, when someone shouts you out, wherever you're working, whether it's at a corporation or you're in a DAO, that really feels good, and it really encourages you to keep doing more of the same. I think praise is very important in any organization.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a lot of research that bears that out. That if you want to tap into people's intrinsic motivation, and what is the biggest net motivator, it's certainly being acknowledged, appreciated, and cheered on. And that's really one of the fundamental things we built Coordinape around.
The proverbial carrot, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Zach, I think what you were talking about earlier with a record of your contributions, that segues real nicely into this new product or feature that you guys launched, which is called the CoSoul NFT. I wonder if you could give us just a primer on what CoSoul is.
Yeah, I invite Zemm as the CoSoul mastermind to share about it.
Well, like all things in Coordinape and DAOs, a lot of people were part of it. Certainly Zach too. But yeah, I think that the CoSoul is essentially a pretty open soulbound token platform that we wanted to establish so that we could bring Give on chain for the first time and let people kind of own the record of what they've done in Coordinape. So it has a few components. The token itself is on Optimism. It has NFT attributes and inherits characteristics of an NFT, but it's non-transferable except for in circumstances where somebody may need to transfer to a new wallet or something like that. And we also built into it, I think, 8 slots currently that can hold metrics that could be sourced from really anywhere that we'd like. But for now, especially from Coordinape data. So using historical give that folks have been sending to each other over the couple of years that Coordinape has been live, we created an algorithm that helps to normalize that down to a figure that's kind of more interpretable, and post that up on folks' CoSouls that choose to mint one. So in addition to that, there's a sort of generative artwork that brings that pgive characteristic and presents it in a format that's kind of interpretable on a visual level. And a really exciting thing I think about CoSouls is their upgradability. So we have 8 slots that we can add more data to, and can expand the contract to hold more if we want to. So yeah, like Zach said, the vision is that this is a place that can kind of hold your reputation, can be a living CV, and can do all the things that an NFT can do, which is sort of like more every day in the Web3 landscape. So could be used to token gate, could be used to sort of give access to things, and we think that there's like a lot of exciting sort of builds that can sort of grow off of CoSoul as a basic reputational marker that you can keep in your wallet.
Very cool. Yeah. So Zemm, my understanding is that this generative soulbound NFT, when you first mint it, it's going to be unique and it's going to depend on your past contributions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So if you had never used Coordinape before, you can mint one, and right away you'll have a seed of a kind of randomized visual artwork. But the only metric we've created so far, public give, will be 0. And if you were to then go and start a circle or join a circle in Coordinape, and people started to send you give for whatever collaboration you're doing with them, each month it would sync and your pgive number would grow and your artwork would start to change. It would essentially, it's made up of a kind of fractal system called L systems that would grow over time. So the seed and shape of it would remain, but it would get sort of larger and more intricate. And yeah, for some folks that have been working on things in Coordinape since the beginning, back in 2021 when we launched, you have these pretty large ornate shapes and very large pgive numbers. And the idea is that that's like a very basic referent as to the kind of reputation and the value that you've shown to your colleagues by working through Coordinape. And it's something that I think we want to home in on and make more interpretable, so that there's more data on there and you can kind of burrow in and get more of a sense of what somebody's story might be.
Zemm, I'm sensing your artistic background at play here. I'm seeing your artistic hand here at work in the background.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the generative art space is so fascinating in NFTs, and it certainly just seemed like an opportunity to make this into something that was sort of ownable and exciting on a quantitative level, but also on a qualitative level. That there's an excitement and a fun to kind of seeing what shape you get when you first mint your coastal, and as it grows, there's a really quick visual way to kind of get a sense of the scale of somebody's impact for their colleagues in the Web3 ecosystem. So yeah, we worked with a sort of a WebGL programmer named Shelder, who I've collaborated with before, and developed a sort of schema that we could start out with coastals. And I think it's a space that we'll be able to add more to as we come up with more things that a coastal can do.
It really reminds me of gaming. So when in a video game, you have an avatar and you complete certain quests, and then maybe you get a piece of equipment you can outfit your avatar with. That gaming metaphor really reminds me of what's going on here. You wouldn't happen to be a gamer, would you, Zemm?
Not much of one, really. Yeah, I mean, I've certainly played a video game or two, but it's not a deep part of my history. But I definitely agree with you on the kind of ontology of I think the way that you're going to see these reputational spaces evolve. It's been said before, might be something akin to a gaming profile. That there's many attributes coming from the many different spaces that folks interact out in the Web3 landscape, and each one of them may have a kind of lasting impression on a kind of like public profile, so that you're kind of leveling up or you're displaying your skills, and that there's a quick and easy way for you to interpret that, and for the space at large to interpret what you're up to.
And just to even just follow on that a little bit, like specific use cases that we've seen of coastal is having kind of on that gaming analogy, it's like participating in some epic quest, being able to show like a specific circle you were a part of or contributing to a certain project. I think would be really, will be really valuable. I know that, for myself as part of the team that helped to create the Blue Pill, which was a sort of manifesto that Yearn put out, but a piece of media that a lot of us that worked on it are super proud of, but no one really knows about that unless I tell them. But if it's on my coastal, people can see like, oh, it's part of the Blue Pill circle. And so I think it allows people to, really show on chain the specific projects they were a part of, and sort of create that, that character sheet, so to speak. And then also being able to, I think an emerging use case that we're seeing and are excited for people to try more and build on is to have a coastal, gating different, whether it's channels or airdrops or things like that, but you can be actually speaking to or incentivizing people, not just who have showed up in the Discord or done other things trying to sort of mark engagement, but have actually demonstrably contributed to your project. And so having a channel where you're only speaking to people that have 100 pgive from your project, or only airdrops to people who have 300 or something like that, so that they really have proof of contribution on chain. I think is a really exciting potential that we're psyched to see people start to explore and play with.
Totally. Yeah. With the COSOL, you have this on-chain record of past contributions, which makes it easier to, potentially just communicate with those contributors directly, or perhaps reward them for something that they've already done in the past. Zach, I think you used this metaphor earlier, but the on-chain resume, I think, is a very apt description. Just innovating on new ways in this sort of new decentralized, Web3 paradigm of acknowledging contributions and rewarding them.
Exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I know my understanding is that COSOL is your current focus. I know you guys just rolled it out on OP mainnet. What's up next on the roadmap for Coordinape?
Well, I think we've got a lot of exciting things going on at Coordinape that we're eager to build on. And, I think one of them that is a kind of like loose focus that I think we're going to be kind of plodding away at over time is the introduction of a kind of more network layer for Coordinape. Currently, the application and the kind of product is optimized for kind of closed groups or semi-porous groups like a DAO or a team at a small company. And we think that that's like the kind of where the juice is for Coordinape. That's where you get the highest signal kind of contribution graph. And it's, a very valuable thing for the Web3 ecosystem at large. But we're also really interested in kind of experimenting with opening up a layer that's more about open access and sort of finding your place in Web3. And so I think we are starting to build tools in that direction. We kind of have already put up a semi-porous layer for teams called orgs, which is a kind of like looser association with a DAO that folks that are running a Coordinape organization can choose to use and token gate and kind of bring people in a new way. And we're going to be also experimenting very soon with a gated organization just for COSOL members, for folks that have a COSOL. So using token gating that we've set up with guild.xyz and bringing folks into a kind of experimental social experiment is the best thing to call it, I think, at this point, where people can start to build up their first public give, even if they're not currently part of a Coordinape organization or DAO, and kind of experiment and get to know the tool. So I think that'll be coming out pretty soon. And in general, without like a lot of like specifics, I think that's a direction that we want to put more emphasis on and experiment with more. I'm sure, Zach, you also have a lot of roadmap items that are on your mind too.
Yeah, I mean, the other side that we're thinking about a lot is, how I alluded to earlier. How can we help to, support and encourage really generative conversations among teams, right? So after you have this allocation, and there's a pretty cool map feature where you can sort of see who allocated to who, and we have a lot of exciting ideas on how to make that more robust, how people can access the data insights from that map, but also how do we use this information to have conversations that build a more collaborative, more effective team. So really supporting that sort of socialware side is something that we're really keen on exploring further. And then also, Coordinape has a contributions feature, so people can sort of share what they've been doing over the course of the epoch, and have some pretty cool ideas and experiments going around how AI can potentially be used to basically like look at your work and autofill those contributions, make sort of the reporting on your work easier and more smooth, and then also just thinking about how to engage like all manners of decentralized teams and remote teams out there, and looking for ways to sort of ease people and onboard people into Web3, so that you don't necessarily have to know all the ins and outs of how this works to jump into a circle and start using it. Like I said before, we've had some corporations who aren't involved at all in crypto or Web3 space start to use Coordinape and get a ton of value out of it. So how can we start making it easier for them, and also, sort of in a sort of Trojan horse way, be onboarding people into Web3 and the ethos of decentralized and peer-to-peer collaboration.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to see you guys continue to iterate on this, on the CoSol, and open it up to people, newcomers to Coordinape and Web3, and also expand the definition of what it means to be a contributor, maybe expanding the list of people who can participate outside of the circles to include different types of contributions. Very cool stuff, guys. So I feel like we're close to wrapping up here. Is there anything else you want to say before we say goodbye, Zemm and Zack?
Just encourage people to go check out coordinape.com, and it's really easy to start a circle. Think about a current project you're a part of and your collaborators, and having the chance to thank and appreciate them. It's free to spin up a circle, invite them in, and get giving, and try it out and see how it feels when your team is has a regular cadence of praising and appreciating each other.
Yeah, I would say the same, and also another plug for our upcoming Co-Soulmates experiment, which I think we'll be launching pretty soon, and which basically welcomes everybody that's minted a Co-Soul into Coordinape for their first experience, and more details are coming on that. So keep an eye out.
Awesome stuff, guys. Yeah, I'd encourage everybody tuning in. Let's all go give somebody some praise after this call. How about that? I think we'd all benefit from it. I know I would. Well, thank you so much, Zemm and Zack. This has been a really interesting conversation. So thank you for sharing your story with us on OP Radio. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome.
Thanks, Mac.
Thank you. 10 give to Mac. Appreciate it.
Plus.
Bye, guys. Stay optimistic. See you later.